Started. Thank you all for being here. And as we just mentioned, please share into the chat your name, department, role, and pronouns, where you're coming from, your shared land acknowledgement, and any accessibility needs that you would like to share that will make this experience more accessible and comfortable for you. I'll pause for just a minute so that you can turn on your mic if the chat is not accessible to you. And the last piece here of what challenges are you facing with making sense of your analytics? And I'm going to be talking a little bit more quietly today because I'm getting over a cold or pneumonia or something. um, being flippant about it, but I'm actually feeling okay. So, yeah, I will pause now and please turn on your mic if you need to share with us. So, thank you all as you're sharing into the chat. We appreciate it. Welcome. It's great to see some new faces as well as some very familiar faces. So, thank you all. My name is Val Newmark. My pronouns are she, they. I'm the Director of Strategy at Rooted. Today I'm wearing a sort of pink and gray hoodie. I have red hair and dark green rimmed glasses and pale white skin. I reside on Chichenyo Ohlone land, also known as El Cerrito, California. And I think let's see, anything else about me? I shared my accessibility needs and yeah, the challenges that I'm facing is always just trying to take our analytics and make it into something that is meaningful and can really be directive of the content strategy on our websites. I'll hand it over to Andrew.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for everybody for taking the time to hang out with us today and talk a little bit about analytics. So I am a strategist at Rooted and have worked for a long time in nonprofit digital marketing, and looking forward to digging in and solving some challenges with you all today, and talking more about Google Analytics. I am on Menominee land, also known as Wisconsin, and I am wearing I don't know what color you would call this, maybe a blue shirt, and I have white skin.
Right, thank you. So here's our agenda. We're going to quickly finish up our welcome and then head into an introduction of metrics and do a little activity and a short share out with that. The initial part will really be introductory, so I'll try to move through it kind of on a more quickly level than we will be with some of the latter parts. Then we'll move into some best practices on data storytelling and move into a little bit more lengthy of an activity and share out with some Q&A there at the end. And those who are able to stay with us past the top of the hour, then we'll be able to share some resources as well, though all of it will be accessible and shared after our session together today. So just really quick, our mission, Rooted is really here to try to build and hold spaces for us to share together. So we hope that this time today won't just feel sort of tactical and webinar style, but will really be a space that you're able to spend some time thinking and sharing with one another as well. To begin all of our sessions, for those who have been a part of these before, then you're familiar with our community agreements. I'm just going to read through them quickly and then ask if anyone has anything they'd like to share or add to our agreements today. But one, approach with curiosity, being open to new ways of doing and thinking. Sit with discomfort, expect and accept non-closure. Engage and be present and practice mindful listening. We know there's a lot of things going on in the world, in our workplaces. So just doing your best to not multitask and really hold this space for yourself today. Be aware of power dynamics and consider the space that you consume. Speak from your experience, assume best intent, but acknowledge the impact of your words on others. Ideate Yes, and share ideas freely and openly. This is truly a space to embrace being messy together and putting aside perfectionism, lowering both our judgment of ourselves and one another. And what's shared here stays here, and what's learned here leaves here. Please also be willing to slow down, notice and name anything coming up in the room and share that either, if you would like to do a direct message or anything along those lines. And then take care of yourself and have fun. If you need to use the restroom, get water, stretch, any of those kinds of things, we'll try to also be including breaks throughout our time together. And then Zoom etiquette, most of this is just to be a little bit silly, but please stay fully closed. No dry cleaning necessary, and be aware of your camera angle and keep your mic off unless you're speaking. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share to or contribute? All right. Well, just a quick overview here of Zoom controls. If you would like to show your captions, it's down there in the bottom, almost bottom right. You have some different viewing options here in the upper right. And then if you would like to change your name and add your pronouns, you can do so under the participant portion. And we always welcome any of your reactions or contributing with the chat. So our objectives of today, one, to choose some metrics that are meaningful, review a simple framework, and avoid the fire hose this can often feel like. Build storytelling into your reporting. So giving you some actionable ways to do that and be able to take it back to your team. And then hopefully help you build some momentum to get started. What's really important in all of these sessions is giving you time to think and reflect and work on your own. We really hold that as an important aspect, that it's not just a webinar style, but a place for you to do some of this work. And then we'll, of course, share some free tools at the end, as always. So into our framework, focusing on these sort of 5 key questions is how we're going to format our time together. We'll start with these first 3 and give you some time to reflect on them. We'll give you some examples to hold on to, and be able to think about how it applies to you. But this really the focus of this initial metric selection time is thinking about the outcomes you're wanting to achieve, how your website can support those outcomes, and then what specific things you can have your website visitors do, what actions they're taking that can lead to the conversions and ultimately to these outcomes. And all of this, trying to do it in a way that not just feels actionable, but that you can actually measure as well. And then the second half will be focusing more on the people themselves. What do the people care about as we're trying to move people through your website using your metrics and analytics? Think about from their perspective, and then how you can build a narrative that feels meaningful and actionable to them. So first, we want to just introduce you quickly to our case study so that we have a good framework for how we can be thinking about this work together. And so our, excuse me, case study here is our made-up immigration organization, Immigrant Legal Alliance. And they educate immigrants, community organizations, and the legal sector to help build a legal immigration system that respects and values everyone's rights. I'm sure you can think of a few organizations that this might be pulling from and matching. But so here we go. We want to share some initial resources here with you as well so that you're able to follow along and also be able to work on it yourself in just a minute. But into the chat is the link so that you can follow along on our sort of faux website analytics measurement plan here. So I'm going to keep going here, but this first slide is really just to give you a minute to be able to pull it up and take a look. And we're going to go through each section together and right now. All right. So when we're starting to select the metrics, these are really these first three questions in our framework that we're focusing on. And if I go backward just a slide here, you'll see right here in step one, there are our first three questions, and that's what we're going to be continuing through. Um, and let's focus here just on question one for a moment and take a minute to think about it. We're really trying to start broadly here. So you don't need to worry about your specific metrics yet. We just want to be thinking about organizational purpose. And when we're doing that, it's really important for us to separate out a little bit the difference between outcomes and metrics and what that really means, right? So outcomes are more strategic. It's about building capacity. It would be an example of a kind of higher level idea. So, as it says here, how the work you do affects who you're in service to, versus metrics are more about numerical things. So, it might be a number of workshops. So, this is where you're measuring tactical work, like different activities, specific things that people are doing within your organization or providing out to the public. Does that make sense? I feel like this is always a place where people get kind of hung up of like the outcome versus the output if we're thinking in like logic model terms or theory of change. And so we're trying to adjust some of the language to make it so hopefully it's a little bit more clear the difference between the two. Okay, so in our example here, we're thinking about what outcomes does ILA seek? One, they're wanting to increase immigrant community awareness about their rights within the US legal system. It's obviously, very front of mind with many of us right now. Build the capacity of the legal community to defend the rights of immigrants within the US legal system, and then support systemic legal reform through on the ground organizing and advocacy. So these are kind of our, higher level goals. There's nothing in here specifically that is measurable. So keep that in mind. This is about the outcomes that we're seeking. It's about, like I had here on this previous slide, what are the strategic aspects that we're thinking about? Okay, so here in step one, what are the outcomes? We've now listed our outcomes. Again, you can see in the chat to be able to follow along of what we're working on here. So now into our next question. How does the website support those actions? So now you're thinking about, okay, of these three outcomes that I've selected, we're going to sort of, hone in more closely on one of them. It's always best, even though you're trying to kind of attack a lot of different things on your website or through your analytics at one time, you really want to narrow down and be able to choose one at a time to help you focus, to help make some meaningful change. And because then you can start to iterate and see what's working and then tackle some of the other aspects. So maybe you're going to tackle number one or number three next. But for now, we're just going to focus on number two and drill down on that one. So in terms of the outcome here, building the capacity of the legal community. But then when we're thinking about what can actually be done, so what does success look like? You might be posting regular resources to the website, but the actual conversion, the outcome, the measurable piece, so the metric that you can actually, you know, measure is downloading of a resource or an event RSVP. So that's what success looks like. That's the actual output. That's the measurable activity. So you might be holding online webinars and seminars, but it's really the people who are RSVPing and that you're able to track in some sort of numerical fashion. So if these are the ways that the ILA's website is supporting the work, what actions take place on the site that are indicating that this is working is really sort of the framework that we're thinking about here. Is that making sense so far? Okay, please let me know if you have any questions or feel free to raise your hand. All right, I'm going to keep going. As I said, some of this stuff is sort of like, basic initial pieces, so I want to move a little more quickly. So in our example here, what we're going to be continuing through now is we're picking of these outcomes, what's one of the ways that the website can support. So in this case, hold online webinars and seminars to educate the legal community on the latest strategies. And through that, RSVP to events is really where we're going to be focusing. So now continuing forward onto our question number 3. What website visitor's journey leads to these specific actions? So as I mentioned, holding the webinars and seminars leads to event RSVPs. And so now we've sort of gotten our piece by piece of going through these 3 questions on our example. The next part here is to think about engagement journey. Sometimes people will call this your conversion funnel. There's lots of ways to think about it. Anything where someone is taking a purchase or an action on your website is going through this portion of the process. And so this is really a good place to start when we're thinking about breaking down, our kind of initial ideas, our initial outcomes, and then moving that into our awareness and engagement funnel. So starting with awareness, the thinking that you're doing here is like someone going from not knowing about you to knowing about you and the kind of high level pieces of what's happening there. And then what that looks like within your Google Analytics are users versus new users, sessions, things along those lines, page views. The next stage in your awareness is actual engagement, right? Knowing when people are reading and watching and engaging with the content. So that's more related to your engagement rate, the average session duration. There are different pieces that you can quickly pull from your Google Analytics to be able to see this across different sections of your site. And then the last piece here of when you're actually converting the person or they're taking an action where they're actually moving forward and you're seeing them sign up or share or download or click, those kinds of actions. So this is just another tool to help you think through what the different pieces of your analytics will help you focus towards the different stages, because you're always wanting to be thinking about not just where a person is in your engagement funnel, but where you can move them to next. All right, so now let's do this yourselves. So you can make a copy. Let me throw these into the chat here. We're going to have a few minutes for you to be able to work on all of this yourselves. Hopefully you've come with something in mind that you want to work on in your own website. But you'll be able to make a copy either of well, both are technically a Google worksheet, but one you'll be able to pull down to use as not just a Google Doc, but a Word doc as well, if that is useful to you. Does anyone have any questions of what to do for yourself? We'll give you about 10 minutes to be able to work on this piece to pull all of your information together so that you can really go much more deeply as Andrew takes over in just a minute. All right, so what you're going to do is take your worksheet, fill out questions 1 to 3, select one outcome, just like we did in our example, an action that supports it, and then select 3 metrics that describe what the website's user journey will be. And we'll be here if anyone gets stuck, feel free to turn your mic on and ask any questions. And then we'll spend about 5 minutes. Anyone who wants to share, we will welcome that so that we can both use you as an example to share with others, as well as be able to answer any questions. And then we'll move into what to do with this.
All right. Well, so hopefully everybody feels comfortable with what has happened so far. And obviously, there will be plenty of time for questions and share out after this second section as well. So, as you know, at this the last two questions of this framework really are around reporting and data storytelling. So before we hop in and look at the final two questions and have you all work on that, I wanted to create a little bit of grounding for why data storytelling even matters. So we have a couple of ideas here. First and foremost, Val, am I controlling the slide deck or are you? Let's go. Okay, there we go. First and foremost, number one, numbers alone really don't tell much of a story, right? Context is going to be super important when it comes to reporting because context is going to add some sort of meaning to the numbers that you're reporting to people. The second item here is that context provides a lot of clarity around performance, just generally speaking. When you're reporting a number, is it a good number? Is it a bad number? Are we getting better? Are things going down? Is it kind of the same? And then thirdly, how does this impact our work, right? When we're starting to think about turning numbers into action, making numbers actionable is extremely important when we're talking about these things as a team. And then lastly, I think we don't do this enough, but oftentimes reporting is a great time to celebrate. It's a time when we can be inspired about the work that we're doing. And ultimately, our teams can get really energized around that. I can't tell you the number of times that we've worked with the communications or fund development team and looked at numbers, but they're not being shared across all of the different departments who are doing a lot of work. And so, great opportunity to celebrate and get inspired. The other thing in our next section here is talking about what are a couple of quick tips? And this is going to be baked into some of the things that we work on in question 4 and 5. So number one, know who you're talking to. Not every number is going to be important to everyone. And in fact, a lot of times we're going to be reporting very different things, whether we're talking to our board or executive director, or maybe we're talking to a program manager, or maybe we're even talking to a donor or a volunteer. All of those people are going to have very different interests in terms of the performance of your website, your organization, and different things that are taking place. Number two, I would highly recommend reporting regularly. We often talk to communications teams who are, looking at these numbers because they're important to their work, but maybe not regularly sharing it with different program teams and stuff like that, even though they are doing work. So, if you were to go to a program team and say, hey, that blog post that you put up there last week has been the most popular blog post of the year. I think that would impact the way that people think about the work that they're doing and really give context to the energy that they're putting into things. Number three, oftentimes less is more. I'm sure you all are aware or have looked at Google Analytics and sometimes feel overwhelmed by it because there are too many numbers. That definitely is the same when we're reporting out to different teams. And I often think about, maybe only considering one or two different numbers when you're reporting out to different people. And then last thing here, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the right tools make reporting really, really a lot more effective. We love dashboards here at Rooted, and we have actually a free dashboard that we can share with you all that you can plug your own data into that comes out of Google Analytics, and we're going to share that with you in a little bit. So let's just move
Wait,
along.
Andrew, pause. We
Yep.
have a hand raised.
Okay, great.
Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, thank you for acknowledging my hand. Um, I had one question for the Google Analytics because I know
Yeah.
oftentimes in my work, they're like, we want all of the numbers, we want what's the reach, what's been the most clicked on pages, we want all of the information. So if it
Yeah.
was to like boil it down to like two or three, what would be the bigger analytics that you think we should focus on?
Yeah. And we're actually just about to answer that question. I love that you brought it up. And so I think we can talk about that in question. If we go on to the next slide and hop into this framework, we will actually be starting to look at when we're reporting who is our target audience. And so One of the things that's super helpful in this, if we go to the next slide, is essentially if you look at the measuring plan that we put together, incorporated in there are some ways to put together almost like a profile of who we are going to be reporting to. So, Val, let's go to slide 35. There you go. Perfect. So when you're creating a profile, I'm not going to read all of these, but these are some important questions that you might want to ask yourself, right? When you're starting to think about who is it that I'm actually reporting to and what types of numbers are going to be important for them. So as I said, if we go to the next slide, within your measurement plan, there is actually an area in question 4 where you can start to think about who am I actually talking to? What is the organizational goal that's important to them? And then therefore, what are the metrics? The thing that's also really important is, do they have really key questions that we might need to answer as well, right? So for instance, I work on the social media team. I'm really interested in how much traffic we get to the website from social media, right? So hopefully that's a good resource. Let's move on to question 5 so we can keep moving through here. Question 5 is, okay, now that we know who we're talking to, what is the narrative that we want to build around this, or what is the actual report that we want to create? So a couple of tips on that in the next slide. Number 1, always include a time span, right? We're always thinking about when did these numbers actually take place. Number 2, let's make sure that we analyze the entire journey of our visitors on our website. So this is, where did they land on the site? Like how long have they spent on there? What types of activities did they do? Because ultimately there may be different points in that journey that we might want to focus on over time. If we see that conversion rate is really great, but maybe we don't have a whole lot of traffic, maybe we want to start focusing our time and energy on getting more traffic to the site, right? Number 3, I mentioned this before, context and comparison is always an important thing to include into your reporting, because we want to celebrate the increases and the good numbers and talk about opportunities when things are decreasing or things are not going the way that we want, right? Number 4, let's make it relevant to that person. Again, knowing who we're reporting to and the types of questions that they might have, we want to make sure that we're answering those questions. And then number 5 is always, we want to make this actionable, right? What do we think? We might not ever know, but what do we think maybe contributed to the numbers that we're looking at? And it's totally fair to put a hypothesis out there. Maybe in some cases you feel more confident than others, but I would say put a hypothesis out there and start to say, hey, we think that because we're posting more on LinkedIn, we saw more visits to this particular page, things like that. Additional question here, is there a way to see the client's journey through Google Analytics? If there is, I'm missing out. So this is something in the original Google Analytics that I thought was really good. In Google 4, it's a little bit harder to see, but there is a place in the, I think it's called Explore tab, where you can create what's called a funnel report. And unfortunately, or fortunately, you have to make it custom. So it can be a little bit frustrating, and it can be a little bit difficult too. All right. Let's move on to the next slide. I'm not going to read this entire thing, but what you can see in here and what's important, and this is in the example as well, is that we've covered all of those things, right? We have our time period, we have a metric for each portion of the funnel or each portion of the journey. We provide some context in terms of, is this good? Are we going up? Are we going down? There are some key questions that we know our program manager has, and so we've answered those in here. And of course, at the end, we have some recommended action or a hypothesis around what we should be doing in our work in order for us to continue to see the success that we've seen. So again, hopefully this can be sort of like a template that you all use as you start to think about doing this work on your own. So with that, we can hop into our activity. And again, this is going to be basically just building off of the work that you've already done to date. I think maybe we should do just 5 minutes or so to go through this process so that we have enough time for share out or to answer questions. So in that same worksheet that you all were working on before, if you want to go through the process of filling out question number 4 and question number 5, use the example worksheet if you get stuck. Again, in the example, you'll see that we have a fictitious profile that we've built out about the person that we're going to be reporting to, and then, of course, a written out report as well. And it should be highlighted in there, the different elements of good data storytelling, so that hopefully you can sort of copy that and use that as a template. So let's take about 5 minutes here, and then we'll come back and we can do questions if people run into challenges, or if you have specific questions about Google Analytics, we're more than happy to hop in and talk about that as well. And then after that, as I said, stick around. We've got a couple of tools that we want to share out with you as well.
So yeah, I can share mine.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I tailored mine for stakeholders, essentially because that's who I report to.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically had mine tailored for like event attendance, and then
Okay.
the action to track that was to see how much did people donate or spend at the event. And also sometimes time, because usually you want to make sure that the event isn't away. So we usually try to track how long people are there as well. Um, and then the oh, I forgot the other part. The action, sorry, no, the journey metrics that I will be looking at if I was just looking at like Google Analytics would
Yep.
probably be those who went to the event page, or
Mm-hmm.
and those who actually bought a ticket to attend the event
Right.
per se.
Okay. Yep.
Um, I wasn't sure on the questions portion. I don't know if I tailored it as if my stakeholder was asking me questions. Is that what
Mm-hmm.
we were doing? Okay. Uh,
Yeah. Do you want to, is your stakeholder an internal team member, or who is this person?
I would say they're kind of like a board member more so.
Okay. Okay.
So they're like a part of the company, kind of directing, but they're not actually a part of the
Gotcha.
organization.
Gotcha.
Um, so I tailored it to say the questions they would ask was, well, how did you promote the event? How much did you spend on marketing and advertisement?
Mm-hmm.
Did you at least break even with the event and making back that money, or did you make more? If you only broke even or you made less than what you were expecting at the event, how are you going to make up that difference in the future? Keep the budget on on par for the end of the year. So
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So some of those, and this is totally fair, some of those numbers are going to come from outside of Google Analytics, probably. And I think that's totally fine. We certainly work with people a lot that have external data sources that they bring into their dashboards and things like that. So it's good. Anybody else have questions that they'd like to? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Let me see if I can untangle this question. I'm curious if you have thoughts on the utility of looking at various analytics on different platforms to sort of get to the same goal. For
Mm-hmm.
example, is it worth looking at both the Google Analytics of who, the funnel of how people got to where you want them to go,
Yeah.
and also the sort of like click-through rate in Constant Contact, for example? Or is there a point at which you're just sort of like, worshiping numbers picture?
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends. I would say, and Val, feel free to jump in if you have opinions here, but I think there's a lot of value in terms of getting familiar with all of these different systems and how they're working and how they're working in concert. I think sometimes that can get overwhelming. However, I would say that particularly for the team that is responsible for your website and responsible for your email marketing, those numbers are going to be relevant to their work, right? Maybe it's not something that you would necessarily report to your board, but if one of your main strategies as a fund development department or a programs department or a communications department is that, hey, email is going to be one of our main strategies around how we work, then I would definitely make sure that you're tracking, the audiences that you're sending things to, how your list is growing, the ways in which you segment your email campaigns and how they perform. And also, on the website side of things, when you get people to click through and go to your website, how often, where are they landing? How often are they actually following through on the process of doing whatever it is that you want them to do? And how does that compare to other channels? So I would say it's relevant for specific teams, but maybe not something that you would want to report out to other people within your organization. Yeah, Julie.
Yeah, this is something that maybe analytics can't tell us, but how do we know if we're reaching the right people, if we're reaching who we want to be reaching? I know that, I mean, you can do it by region, that some of
Mm-hmm.
the demographic information is a little squishy, but
Yeah.
are there particular metrics that would let us know that we're reaching the audiences we're trying to reach?
That's a really good question. I definitely agree with you that the Google Analytics demographics data is a little squishy, and I don't know that it always necessarily would give you the answer that you're asking for. I think the things that I would look for are engagement metrics, right? So things like engagement rate. If you see that you have a really low engagement rate on your site, it could be a UX issue, it could be an audience issue. So, but it will elevate the fact that something's not working there, right? The other thing you might want to look at is duration. The average session duration is a metric. I think though that it probably does go a little bit beyond the analytics side of things, and I would say it would even go backwards into like more strategic discussions of really trying to understand who are your target audiences, where do you find them, and then trying to build strategies around going out and engaging those people. And then you could start to look at, okay, our strategy is to find these people in these places, and they maybe like content on our website and they would go to these pages, right? And so then you could look at those pages specifically on your site and see how they're doing. But I would say that that question is almost more of like a strategy question versus just a metrics question.
Yeah, I was going to hop in here specifically around the content strategy piece of it, because I think that's a really important consideration. And maybe even starting with whatever your conversions are. So, what are the things that the outcomes that people, not just the outcome like we were, sort of talking about earlier of the bigger picture strategy pieces, but then what metrics can you actually glean? So what conversions are happening on your site? Are people signing up for things? Are they downloading things? Um, is there a webinar? Is there, I mean, and maybe if you even want to share, like, what are some of the like tactical things that people are able to do on your website? Can you share some of that, Julie? And then we can kind of help more specifically.
We do a lot of reports, and it's unclear to me who's using them and how they're using them.
Mhm.
Our research staff does really big deep dives into issues affecting various aspects of labor issues. For things like signing up for trainings and webinars, those metrics are pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, we can look at list growth for our e-blasts, but just our, we have blog posts, just our content in general, it's hard to know if we're reaching our target audiences.
Yeah. Do you have on your blog posts, for example, do you have like related blog posts listed there or places for people to click from the posts that they've been on?
Not so much.
So some of that would also help too. Like it sounds like a lot of what would help you would be more like content strategy specific things where we would start by looking at all of your top visited pages. look at the engagement, as Andrew was mentioning, of those pages, and then see what's happening on the pages themselves, and if it's clicking, if there's opportunities to dive deeper into different subjects from those pages. And so then we'd actually be able to track people and see like, okay, they're landing on this page, here's where they're going next. And if that is a successful conversion happening, or if they're sharing something, or if they're then on that page, there's not just related content, but there's a webinar sign up or an interest list sign up or something, some sort of actual conversion that can happen. And then the other thing that I put into the chat is another tool called Hotjar that I think works really well as sort of a hand in hand with your analytics. With clients, I'll oftentimes look at both at the same time because then you can actually see a heat map of where people are clicking on given pages, as well as being able to track like watch individual people's sessions as they're going through your site to understand where they clicked, where they paused and things along those lines to see, because then you can kind of glean like, okay, this person must have been looking for this kind of thing. And is that the right kind of person? Is that where we want them to go? Or what can we do to curate the experience to get them to the content we want them to see?
All right. Any other questions or thoughts from folks or resources that we can help with?
I haven't heard of Brand Watch, so I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, so the brand watch, it basically works like what is that? I'm blanking on it right now. It's not Agorapro, Sprout, but it also provides you with like online feedback on kind of just what
Hmm.
people think about your brand. And that's what
Yeah.
made me
Oh,
think like, does it work the same way?
who, so yeah, I did a quick search and it's more like a social listening tool. Hotjar's not necessarily a social listening tool, though I'm sure you could also use aspects of it for that. It's really more of a website content strategy tool where it allows you to go more deep, into what people's individual experiences on your website are. Um, which is it's a little bit different than Google Analytics. It does have a lot of the capability of Google Analytics, but not quite like the sort of vastness of data. But the data that it does collect, will show you your like top visited pages. It will show you the engagement on those pages. But the pieces that I really love about it are that you can, and even with the free version of it, you can get these really nice heat maps to see where people like where it overlays your homepage, let's say, and shows you where people are actually engaging and where they're scrolling and sort of gives you some of the insights you need to boost, and elevate content on your site. So what we've been doing with a couple of our different clients most recently is we take those top pages, and then we start to refer, from the different, how do I explain? Andrew always calls this like clustering content. And so where you're taking like a topic that you're wanting people to engage with more that has some kind of clear conversion at the end. And then you'll take the top pages that would show up in keyword searches and or that are just the top pages on your site and make sure that there's links to those other pages within those top pages. And then the piece around, on blog posts, having related content at the bottom of that, of any pages really that are, that people, using your analytics, seeing which are your top 10 pages and making sure that you have ways for people to engage more deeply in your content through related content, like little links or links within the content or calls to action on the page. Any of those kinds of things are going to increase your engagement rate. And the more you're able to sort of group those pages and they're referring to each other, then you'll keep people on your site longer. I know we're past the top of the hour, and so, I know a lot of people have needed to hop out, but Andrew and will stick around for a couple more minutes and then go through these last bits here. Hopefully you can you see my screen again? No.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I can.
Okay. Just making sure. Do you want to speak to the dashboard a bit, Andrew, and then I'll
Sure. I
go through
mentioned
the next
before
one.
that one of the things that we find really useful with folks are these dashboards. There are a number of different platforms that are available for this. We really like to use Google Looker Studio. It used to be called Google Data Studio. It's very similar if you're familiar with Power BI. Google Looker Studio is a free version of data dashboards. And Val already put a link in the chat if you want to check it out. You can go in and just make a copy of it. And then you can, once you're an administrator on your own version, you can go in and put your own Google Analytics data right into it. Dashboards are really great because it means that you can share this with anybody at your organization and they can access data whenever they want, right? So we always like to say it democratizes that data and leads to people having more interest. It also means, like I said before, I find Google Analytics really overwhelming myself because there are so many different metrics in there, and so dashboards do a really nice job of um, funneling you down into the specific things that are relevant to your work and put everything else to the side. As I said before, I think Google Analytics 4 is really nice because it's very customizable, but I find the interface somewhat confusing, and I feel like the out of the box reports are not super useful or meaningful. And as I said at the outset, there are a number of different systems that do this, both free and paid. Google Looker Studio and Power BI, I think, are some of the most common ones. And the other thing that's pretty neat about these systems is you can bring Google Analytics data into them, but you can also create additional sources of data. So, for instance, oftentimes we'll have data sitting in a spreadsheet that can come in and make everything really visual. Yeah, glad to hear that you have some challenges with GA4 as well. And so, yeah, this is just a starting point of a dashboard that you all could use. We created this just to kind of go along with the example of the case study that we walked you through today, but hopefully you find it useful as a starting point. If there are any questions around it, I think one of the big things that we like to offer is if you have any questions that come out of this session, we're more than happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you as well.
So on that note, here again is, I'll put it back up in a second, but the link to our survey. Please share any thoughts. Come September is when we start to design what sessions we'll be sharing out with the community for next year. So your input is very much used. Any things that you want to see that we haven't been offering, we just want to hear any and all feedback that people are able to share with us. And we do use it immediately and put it into good use. So if you want to have a chat, please feel free to reach out to me. There's my Calendly link, and I put it in the chat as well. And we can talk through anything related to analytics or content strategy for your website, or really anything communications related that you'd like to talk about. So feel free to sign up for a time for us to get together, and I can hear more about what's going on and what's bothering you or keeping you up at night. And we can try to come up with some solutions. One more thing. We have one final roundtable of the year that will be in September, on Thursday, the 18th. And it'll be around building and organizing your brand. So not just talking about branding as an overall concept, but how do you organize it and help your team use the branding that is being crafted, the messaging, the visuals to keep consistency, and how to kind of put it all together to make things easier for your whole organization to be able to be walking in step together. So it's another free time for us to spend together with some workshop aspects and as well as some webinar aspects. Oh, yes, I can share the link for that. Sorry, I forgot the URL there. So while I'm pulling that up for you to sign up for our final, here is the link to that. And just as you're heading out, please share any insight you had from today's session. And as always, we really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness and your contributions, and just getting to have some time with you. So thank you all so much and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, y'all.